Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. Today we're going to review Alien Rogue Incursion VR, a game released on the Steam store December 19th, 2024 by what used to be my favorite VR developer, Survios. It normally retails for $40. I did buy this game and I tested it out on the Meta Quest 3 using link cable and also virtual desktop on my RTX 3080, and no matter what I tried, I always had some performance issues. Alien Rogue Incursion is an action horror VR game that transforms you into ex-colonial marine Zula Hendrix on a dangerous mission to the uncharted planet Perdan. And there was some controversy upon the release of this game because it was not made very clear that this was part one of a planned two-part series. And I will admit that when I bought this game, I did not know that, so I didn't do my research ahead of time. But at the end of the day, I don't think it would have changed my purchase decision. It took me about 10 hours to beat the game, and this is a licensed game, so there's always going to be a premium price on that. And just given all the production values here, I think $40, yeah, it might be stretching the value proposition, but I think it's still there. Overall though, I am going to recommend Alien Rogue Incursion. It's a flawed game, so I do have mixed feelings, but I think there's enough good points to recommend Alien Rogue Incursion. But it is one of those games that takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back throughout. So let's talk about Alien Rogue Incursion, what I liked and what I did not like. First of all, Alien Rogue Incursion is running on the Unreal Engine 5.3, and on my RTX 3080, performance was really all over the place. At times it seemed to run smoothly and then frame rates would drop severely. It was usually around the elevators or when there were lots of enemies coming. So basically some of the worst times is when it tanked. However, I will say there's lots of graphical settings to play with in this game, and I probably should have tinkered more in there, but it was difficult since, like I said, it ran fine for the most part, but then it would suddenly stop running fine, so that's why it was hard to get exactly right. And I only experienced one major issue or bug, but it did happen about 3 different times during my almost 11 hours with the game. And the issue is that my left hand would like despawn, which is a major problem because obviously you need to two-hand the shotgun or the assault rifle, and you need both hands in order to be able to reload, and so this would usually lead to a death and losing whatever progress I had. But that was the only major issue I faced. But the game did lack some overall polish that you would expect from a developer like Survios. For example, it would sometimes be difficult to get the correct item because several items were highlighted, or you might try to pick up an item from the ground and instead you pick up your revolver. Weapon handling felt odd, almost like they were made out of spaghetti or something. On the other hand, there were several cool VR interactions, such as when a desktop terminal is all bloody and you have to wipe it off in order to be able to use it. Rewiring the control panel and then having to use the lever to open up the panic room, then saving by putting your little data pad on the desktop terminal is pretty cool. The visuals are excellent in this game. The lighting is especially good. This is one of those games where you really need to use your flashlight, and it's scary whenever it's off. And the atmosphere, for the most part, is very good. It's very intense. It's very stressful at times. You can only save by going into a panic room, and you definitely feel the stress when a bunch of xenomorphs come out of nowhere and you don't know where the safe point is. And while this works for the most part, it's also a part of the game that I found frustrating. While I appreciate what the developers were going for with this gameplay concept, its execution wasn't always on target. And I think the problem is that the developers overdid it. And that's really the biggest problem with this game. This gameplay loop just wasn't right. It wasn't finely tailored. It was just overdone way too much. I don't mind a game being stressful. I don't mind a game being challenging, but it seemed like in this game you're just constantly being attacked by these xenomorphs. And a lot of the quests just end up being fetch quests where you're not exactly sure where to go, but in the meantime a lot of xenomorphs come out of the woodworks to attack you over and over again. And part of the problem is that the game loses its horror aspect. I must have killed 100 xenomorphs by the end of this game, and they lost any horror aspect that they might have had. This game goes from maybe feeling like a horror game at the beginning to feeling like a pure action game at the end with very punishing mechanics if you die. It's very easy to lose a lot of progress in this game, and so part of the difficulty just becomes remember the map, know where the safe points are, otherwise you're going to have a very rough time in this game. And since I beat the game, I got the achievement for beating it, and I can tell you that less than 10% of the Steam players for this game have beaten the game. So I can imagine there's lots of people that quit this game after not being able to find a safe. And by the way, a lot of these panic rooms are unlocked by playing this mini puzzle where you have to connect the wires while it's dark and while you're being attacked by a lot of xenomorphs. This game is definitely not for the faint of heart. Now you do have full locomotion along with smooth and snap turning. I did find that the maximum speed of turn was not fast enough for me. You can play comfortably seated, although I noticed in some spots, especially at the start of the game, it's very easy to go out of bounds. So you have to keep resetting your view. The story was a mixed bag for me as well. Now I actually did enjoy the main story. Yeah, it was kind of on the formulaic side, but it was well executed, and I especially enjoyed the relationship between Zula Hendrix and her android companion. However, there were lots of voice recordings and messages found on the terminals throughout the base, and these were very dry to read or listen to. I did not know what the point of most of them were. On the other hand, the sound mix for this game was excellent. Very good use of spatial audio. I could always tell where the xenomorphs were coming from, and yeah, it's terrifying to hear them on the vents, and you can tell where they're coming from, but you can't see them. And the musical soundtrack was, chef's kiss in this game. Great soundtrack, and the voice actors all did a wonderful job as well. So sound-wise, this game was near perfect. Now the gameplay I do have mixed feelings about. The core gameplay loop was fun, and there's also some nice puzzles here with the wires as well, but the combat does not evolve, and the same thing goes with the wire puzzles. You're doing the same thing at the end of the game that you're doing at the start of the game, and you can say it gets easier as you go along because you have more save points unlocked the further you go in this game. And near the end, you're just basically just backtracking. Yeah, the face huggers get introduced, and you do have like a boss fight near the end, but that just wasn't nearly enough because a lot of the combat is exactly the same and a lot of the puzzles are exactly the same. So overall, I do recommend this game. I did have fun, but it also was very frustrating at times, especially when I died. This game really punishes you for dying, and it often feels unfair because it seems you were just cornered and a xenomorph jumped at you and you just weren't able to dodge out of the way fast enough, or you get triple teamed by xenomorphs. So if I have to rate Alien Rogue Incursion, I would give it a 7 out of 10. It's good enough, but it could have been better. It just wasn't finely tuned to make for a good VR experience throughout. It's good at times, but it's frustrating at others. Anyways, that's my review for Alien Rogue Incursion. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of the video.